This is Razer's new Kiyo V2 webcam. It's coming in at $150, can do 4K 30 FPS, and has AI integration for some powerful tools. But really is aimed at making high quality video very seamless and easy to capture. But is it going to be enough? See, Insta360 has really been dominating the webcam space lately in my mind. So in this video, we're going to deep dive into the Kiyo V2, check out all the features, see how it looks, how it sounds, and compare it to some of the Insta360 webcams. And then by the end, hopefully you have a good idea of whether or not this is one that you'll want to pick up or upgrade to. So first off, we need to take a look at the design of this thing. It's a little bit of a departure from the design of the Kiyo Pro, which had a much larger round body design. The Kiyo V2 has a large rectangle that holds the microphones, but you can see at its core, it still kind of has that one large circular apparatus here, just not quite as big as the Kiyo Pro. One of the coolest features actually is this ring that engages the privacy shutter. Honestly, they can make a little fidget out of this that I would just play with. It's a very satisfying click as it kind of jumps back and forth between those. So maybe one of my favorite design features of this thing. On the back, there is a single USB-C port. And of course, we kind of have the universal mount where you can change this to clip it onto a monitor. And then you can also adjust the angle of it. Or if you'd rather put it on a tripod, there is a 1/4-20 thread down here on the bottom. But that mounting system also is one of the detriments when compared to something like the higher end $200 Link 2 from Insta360. You see, when it has this hard mount that just sits on top of the monitor that is hard mounted to an arm or a stand that's hard mounted to your desk, if you ever, have any inputs, you're putting down a cup or, banging your hand, moving your keyboard, all that movement is transferred into the mount here, and it gives a little bit of shake in your camera. Not the end of the world, most cameras do it, but that is something that Insta360 made a nice update with their Link and Link 2. They actually have the camera mounted on a gimbal, and it doesn't do that. So personally, that is one reason why I really love to recommend the Link 2 from Insta360. But of course, the Link 2C is at the same price point, $150, as the Kiyo V2. So this really is what we should be comparing it to more. Hey, I'm Jordan, and if at any point you find this video helpful, please give me a subscribe. We're getting so close to 100,000 subscribers, and I would love to hit it by the end of the year. It would be the best Christmas present that you could get me, and it doesn't cost you anything. All right, back to the video. All right, so now let's talk about video specs. We are recording on the Kiyo V2 right now. I am in Synapse. So you can see it can record in 4K 30 FPS. It can do 1440 at 30 or 1080 at 60 FPS. So depending on what kind of content you are creating with this, that's a nice variety of resolutions and frame rates. It has an 8.3 megapixel Sony StarViz sensor and a nice wide 93-degree field of view. That is one thing that's quite a bit wider than the Link 2C from Insta360. So if that is something you're thinking about, you really want to show off what's in your room and have a nice wide FOV, this is probably going to be the best pick when compared to the Link 2C. So while we are in Synapse, let's take a look at everything you can do. So you can set different presets up here. You can save different things. Of course, I just have one right now, the test one, or else I have the default. Next, you can see what video feed you are previewing, which we'll come back to this a little bit later when we start talking about camo. So next up, it talks about camo a little bit here, everything you can do, which is not in Synapse. It's in a separate software that you have to download and install and connect to all this. Moving down a bit further, we do have the preview resolution. So here we can see we have the 4K 30, 1440 30, all the different options here for your resolution. Now that higher resolution does let you kind of zoom in a little bit, and if you want to move the image around, you can. Another cool thing about that is you can set different presets if you want. So if you are, streaming and you want a nice wide thing that just shows off your entire room, but then you want a second angle that's a little bit closer on your face for some sort of reaction, you can make a preset and you can save a shortcut for that as well, so you can quickly go back and forth. Now moving on down, one thing that Razer really focused on with the Kiyo V2 is making things powerful but very simple and easy to use if you want. And I found that to be pretty accurate. So we have the autofocus enabled. You can put it on manual if you want. We have the auto exposure enabled, and I found that face gives me the best exposure here in my room. If I do average, it is kind of trying to brighten it up because of the darker image in the back of my studio here. If you go for center, it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference either, maybe because I have a black shirt on. But if you hit face, I feel like it does find my face and accurately expose for that, which I think is the best looking image you can get here. And then you can change the compensation if you do want it to be a little bit brighter, even based on where it's metering, or a little bit darker. So pretty cool there. And then with the Lighting, you can go standard or stylized. Doesn't seem to make a whole lot of difference, so I'm just leaving it there. Moving to the next tab, let's go to processing. Here's where we can change between performance or quality for the picture. HDR, you can have darkroom or bright room, and I do feel like HDR is a nice thing to have on here. Let me flip it off real quick. With HDR turned off, the image kind of loses that contrast and saturation that I think makes it look a little bit more engaging. Looks a little bit flatter. Some people might prefer that image, but for me, I prefer having the HDR turned on. Then you have low light compensation, automatically adjust the camera brightness when low light scenes. And then down here, we have dynamic noise reduction. And if I turn both of these off, the image, I don't know if it comes through on YouTube with all the compressions, but the image does look pretty darn grainy. So turning these back on is a must in my opinion. And you'll see here in the little help tool, it says, in well-lit scenes, it's recommended that you disable this setting. So I guess my scene must not be well lit enough. I am using the Razer Kiyo Chroma, and it's at a pretty low light. I think it's at 10% of what it can do. So that is, of course, another huge factor in any webcam is having some decent lighting, either a key light or a window or something that's kind of towards the front that either illuminates your face or something from the side. And that really just can make any webcam look a lot better. So definitely something to keep in mind. You know, you can buy the most expensive webcam, but if you don't have a decent light, then it might not make that big of a difference. The next tab here is image, and these are where you have like all the granular controls for brightness, contrast, saturation, white balance, and I'm just leaving these on auto. You also do anti-flicker, and then I'll just give you an example of what some of these different image presets do. Most of them are pretty extreme. The warm looks okay, but I'm just gonna leave it on default here because that's what I like the best. And moving over to microphone, there are two different options. We have adaptive noise reduction and crystal clear voice. And we'll talk about the microphone in just a little bit. So that is all the settings in Synapse, but that also takes us to Camo, which is the other part of this whole thing. So I need to disable the preview in Synapse, and then we will get it going here in Camo, and we'll see what sort of changes we can make to the image through this. It's a standalone app. Typically, it's a $50 per year subscription, but it's included. You get a license for it with your Kiyo V2. Some of the main features we're looking at up top here, you can do, of course, autofocus or manual focus. I'll leave it on auto. And then you have your background. So the normal background is just how it comes out of the camera. You can do background blur if you want, which is pretty subtle. Or you can do the pretty extreme, I think they call this like background hiding or privacy. I guess that's what they call it. And then the last option you have here is background removal. And so this is kind of like, you know, NVIDIA broadcast, where it's kind of just keying out the whole back so you can put yourself on top of other images and be able to see things behind you. And so it's a nice feature to have. I do feel like NVIDIA broadcast is just a little bit more precise. You can see as I'm moving my head around, it kind of misses some stuff around my hair. It's missing some weird things on the seat here. But, you know, overall not bad, but not maybe quite as good. And maybe if I had a brighter light in here, that would make a better difference and it would make it a little bit more accurate. But as far as these settings that I have now, I do feel like NVIDIA Broadcast does a little bit better of a job. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the normal background. The other cool thing here is Spotlight. And so as I kind of flick this on and off, I only have it at 20% right now. But you can see it just kind of focuses on the subject right here in the middle and kind of darkens everything behind and makes the subject pop a little bit more. And of course you can turn that up, but it kind of overexposes my face. So I like to leave it down around like 20% or so. You have a couple filters if you want to change the image. We'll do pop here. You can see kind of gives it like a vintage kind of a look. Quiet background kind of mutes everything behind you. And then sun-kissed also looks a little more vintage, I guess. But I don't really care for those, so I'm just going to turn that off. Then under effects, you have emoji hands, which is exactly what you would think it would be. You get to do emojis with your hands. Maybe with the thumbs up, it only works on, you have to do it with your right. Wait. It's like always backwards? Huh, that's a little weird. Anywho, so I don't really think that's something I'll be using. And then the next feature is framing. And so this is something that Razer talks about, you know, with that 93-degree FOV, it's nice and wide. But if you do want to keep your face a little bit more in the middle, you can turn on this auto framing and zooming. So as you move around, it will kind of track you and kind of just zooms in on your face to keep you, you know, highlighted in the middle. But that's not something I usually use for how I use the webcam, so I'm going to turn that off. Then down here you have all the granular adjustments as well. If you want to do exposure, shutter speed, compensation, white balance, temperature, vibrance, contrast, lots of different options in here. I'm not going to run through all of those. And one thing I forgot to do as we hop back into Synapse, you see you have to turn off the preview, but if you refresh this device preview, you can choose camo and it will pop up on here. So you can see both in camo and Synapse what the image looks like. So kind of a nice feature there. And for all my Mac users out there, Synapse does work on Mac OS, but currently the Kiyo V2 is not supported in that. So that is coming down the line. Everything that I've heard from the Razer product managers, that is something that they're working on. It's just a matter of when, not if. And when that is available, there will be a download code for Camo as well, so you can take advantage of all the AI features here within Camo. But I did test it on my MacBook. You can use the camera just by itself on a MacBook, but you do not get full access to Synapse and all these other controls in here. All right, now the next thing I want to talk about is, I think, maybe one of its weak points, and that is autofocus. And honestly, this is something I feel like I've had issues with on other Razer webcams as well. So it'll find the focus if you put something a little bit closer to it. It takes a little bit of a second there, but then every time it is trying to find that focus, I feel like it has to hunt a little bit. It goes beyond and then forward and then comes back. It's kind of like just a very slow process. It's not like an instant or quick process at all. Now that's only an issue if you are showing things close to the camera often or adjusting your subject quite often where you need to kind of change that focus. But for a normal webcam, that might not be a big issue to you. And maybe you just prefer the color of this and that's not something that you are too worried about. And the last thing I want to talk about here with the image quality is its low light performance. I recorded this at night with my monitors on, and I think I had a little desk lamp on the left side as well, but no key lights, so most of this light is coming from my monitors. Obviously, we've got the Kiyo V2 on the left and the Link 2C on the right. And I would say that the Link looks a little bit brighter and a little bit clearer. There's a little bit of noise in the background, but I think my face looks a little bit brighter, a little bit clearer. But I still feel like it kind of overexposes a little bit. I prefer it to be a little bit darker, almost closer to the image of the Kiyo V2. So here's just a little comparison. You can see how it works and how it looks in low light. I do think that the Link 2C performs just a little bit better, but you might have to tweak the image, the color a little bit more. All right, now let's move on and talk about the microphone and see how that sounds. All right, so here I am testing and talking on the Razer Kiyo V2, and this is what it sounds like right out of the box. I do have both the adaptive noise reduction and crystal clear voice enabled. And here we'll do a little bit of typing in the background, so you can hear what it sounds like with a keyboard going in the background when I am talking with the Razer Kiyo V2. And one kind of cool thing here, when you deactivate the crystal clear voice, it's actually stereo audio. So if I tap on either side, you'll hear that that is a stereo sound coming through. So pretty cool. So you can kind of play around with what kind of sound you want to use coming out of the Kiyo V2. So the audio sounds pretty good. If you are using this just for a normal webcam use, using this for conferencing, it's probably going to be fine in most situations. But of course, if you are doing any streaming or content creation with it, you're going to want a standalone microphone to get the best audio that you can. I typically recommend for the budget-minded people the SoloCast from HyperX. It's very affordable, very small. You do maybe need a couple of accessories to kind of limit some of the background noise, and I've made a video about that. You can check it down in the description if you want to learn a little bit more about that microphone. All right, so is Razer's Kiyo V2 enough to take on the Insta360 Link 2 or the Link 2C? Honestly, I'm still not sure yet. If you do need something with a gimbal that stabilizes your image, obviously you should go for the Link 2. That's my preferred webcam. But between the Kiyo V2 and the Link 2C, personally, when they're at the same price, I would choose the Kiyo V2. I liked the image that was coming out of it just a little bit more. Unless you are always filming in dark environments or are constantly changing focus. Now, one other thing to keep in mind, it is quite a bit bigger than the Link 2C. So if you are, using this on the go and you want something small, maybe you want to go for the Link 2C because it's quite a bit more compact. But the Kiyo V2, I think, has a little bit of a better looking image. Razer also announced the Kiyo V2X, which can only do 2K or 1440p, I believe, and doesn't have any of the AI features that the Kiyo V2 has. So if you don't find yourself needing all the features of the Kiyo V2 and you want to save some money, the Kiyo V2X comes in at $100. So which image did you prefer? Let me know down in the comments below. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. This is Jordan with 9to5 Toys.